for the journey that
Hello there, and thank you for tuning on to another episode of our Scripture Breakdown Ministry. My name is David Abraham, and our scripture for today is from Hebrew 11 verse 19. And this is a continuation of the last verse, Hebrew verse 11 verse 17 and 18, which speaks about the test of God upon Abraham when he took his son to the slaughter tent. Here it says, concluding that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from which he also received him in figurative sense.
Not just on Sunday, not just enough to get through.
He's saying, concluding that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from which he also received him in a figurative sense. So I want to divide the scripture into two parts, and it says concluding that God was able to raise him up even from the dead. So who concluded that God was able to raise him up from the dead? Here Abraham concluded when he took Isaac to the slaughter. His conclusion, whilst obeying and journeying according to his faith in God and according to the instructions of God, while joining, he concluded that God was able to raise him up even from death, from the dead. So he concluded that this man that I'm going to slaughter, my son, my begotten son, who I'm going to slaughter now, who God told me to go and sacrifice in the mountains, this son will resurrect. This son will be raised from the dead after I have obeyed God. So Abraham took Isaac for the slaughter, concluding that God was able to raise him, Isaac, from the dead. And the second bit said, from which he also received him in figurative terms. Now, what does this speak about? This speak about Abraham, who was as good as dead. Abraham gave birth to Isaac at a very old age. Abraham gave birth to Isaac when his reproductive system had completely collapsed. He was as good as dead, as the Bible told us in Hebrew verse 7 and 8. He said Abraham was as good as dead. So therefore, in figurative terms, Abraham received Isaac whilst he was dead. So he put birth to Isaac while his reproductive system and that of his wife Sarah had packed up many decades ago. Yet God still produced a seed out of him. God still birthed a seed out of him. God still reproduced a seed out of him. God still gave a seed in him. So Abraham was as good as dead. So because he was as good